it's Monday. So remember that time me and my friend Sadie made a video that was literally just us making terrible Remus Lupin puns for like 4 minutes straight? Well, Sadie's birthday is this week! I didn't script that, I promise. Oops, I did it again. And I figured, what better way to celebrate Sadie's birthday than to take one of her favorite stories of all time and mangle it via my own incompetence? I'm a great friend. Sadie is really into Les Misérables, and she had me watch the movie with her one time, and I did enjoy it, but like half of the time I had no idea what was going on, so every 10 minutes I just had to be like, wait, who is that character? Wasn't Cassette like 7 years old in the last scene, and now she looks like she's in her 20s? Am I crazy, or are those two gay for each other? So now, in Sadie's honor, I am going to attempt to retell Les Misérables to the best of my recollection. Oh god. So our story takes place sometime during the French Revolution, so like the 1800s? I at least know that it takes place in France. In the beginning of the movie, our main character is Hugh Jackman, aka Wolverine, dressed in what I can only describe as the mandatory uniform of Azkaban. Hugh Jackman's name in this movie is Jean Valjean, and because he stole one loaf of bread one time, this guy has been in prison for 19 years. The prison is basically a work camp, and in the opening song, all of the prisoners are singing about, like, look down, you'll always be a slave. So, like, basically, all of these people are just having their spirits completely destroyed, and it's just, like, not a fun time. The overseer of the prison is this police officer guy called Javert, except one time Sadie tried to type Monsieur Javert into her phone, and it auto-corrected it to Mosquito Herbert. So that's what I'm going to be calling him for the rest of this video. Herbert's kind of a jerk. He goes up to Valjean and he's like, you'll always be prisoner 24601 or something. And also, just so you know, I am detecting a lot of sexual tension between Valjean and Herbert, and it is fantastic. Valjean finally gets released from prison, and he has this dramatic song about how prison has just completely destroyed his soul, and then he goes to live with this bishop guy in his church for a while. And just so you know, in the book series that this movie is based off of, the entire first book is literally just about this bishop guy and like his entire backstory and the like outline of like how his house looks, and it is so boring, oh my lord. Valjean decides that he's not gonna let prison be his master, and that he's gonna take back control of his life. And then the movie cuts to like 8 years later, and now Valjean is like this really rich guy, and he has become the mayor of a city, and he has changed his name to Monsieur Madeleine, and everybody really likes him now. The problem is Herbert has now moved into the town where Val Madeleine is the mayor, and every once in a while Herbert will go up to him and be like, hey, do I know you from someplace? And then Val Madeleine will be like, no. In this magical town of plot convenience, there also happens to be this sweatshop where a bunch of single women go to work, and they spend, like, all day, every day just sewing stuff, and their boss is some ugly guy who keeps, like, sexually harassing them, and it's not a good time. One of the women working there is named Fantine, played by Anne Hathaway, and she's hiding a secret. She has a daughter named Cassette, but she is unmarried, so she has sent her daughter off to live with these people called the Thénardiers, so they will, like, board her and stuff, and she can keep working. However, the Thénardiers won't harbor Cassette for free, so Fantine has to keep her job in order to pay the Thénardiers every month and keep her daughter safe. But if anyone finds out that she's a single mother, then she will probably get fired from her job because sexism. Eventually, all the other women at the sweatshop find out about this, and they rat her out to her boss for some reason, and he fires her. Fantine can't find any other means to support her daughter, so she resorts to becoming a prostitute. Fun! Eventually, some dude on the street tries to, employ Fantine's services without actually paying her first, so she starts, like, attacking him in the middle of the street, and Val Madeleine comes to break the situation up, and he's like, how dare you, a lowly prostitute, attack an innocent citizen? And then Fantine's like, Yeah, well, the only reason I'm a prostitute in the first place is because all of the sweatshops in your town have such misogynistic workplace policies. And then Val Madeline's like, oh, crud, you're right. I'm sorry that you're being forced to live on the streets. Come live in my mansion instead. But by that point, Fantine has gotten some kind of illness, and she's dying. And her death wish is for Val Madeline to raise her daughter for her. So Val Madeline sets off to go pay a visit to the Thénardiers, and Fantine dies while he's gone. She dies while she's singing this melodramatic song in the rain about how did my life come to this, which, by the way, is not what happened in the book at all. Like, there, she literally goes insane due to the depravity of her situation and from being separated from her daughter for so long, and she literally has her 2 front teeth pulled in order to pay the Thénardiers' bills. It's really freaking sad and not nearly this melodramatic. But anyway, as Val Madeline is leaving town, he runs into Herbert, and Herbert's like, I do know you! You were a prisoner at that one camp however many years ago. And you know what? I simply cannot allow an ex-prisoner to be mayor, even though you literally haven't stolen anything since then, and you haven't shown any criminal intentions whatsoever. But still, I think that you're still a bad person, so I am going to just hound you for the entire rest of this movie. Because of how little sense this makes, I have to assume that my little crack ship is actually canon, and that Herbert's illogical hounding of Val Madeline is just him convincing himself that he hates Val Madeline so that he doesn't actually have to confront all of the feelings that his homophobic culture constantly tells him he needs to suppress. The movie briefly cuts to Cassette, and she's standing outside of her house holding this, like, doll made out of rags, and she's singing something like, da, 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 da. I don't know the words. And then they abruptly cut to the next song, Master of the House, and we get to meet the people that Cassette has been living with for the past 8 years. Spoiler alert, they're freaking horrid. The Thénardiers run this inn, and they're just weaselly, disgusting, horrible people, and there's an entire song about it. And in said song, I'm pretty sure there's a part where Monsieur Thénardier pees into a champagne bottle and then serves it to people. And then there's another part where the 2 of them find, like, a Santa on the street, like, ringing bells or whatever, and they bring him inside the inn and then set him up with a hooker. Madame Thénardier tries to cheat on her husband with one of her guests, and I mean, admittedly, the guy was pretty attractive, but, like, still, adultery is bad, kids. Worst of all, the Thénardiers basically treat Cassette like she's a slave. Like, they constantly beat her and yell at her, and they make her do a whole bunch of chores all the time. And meanwhile, they treat their birth daughter, Eponine, like she is the most perfect little princess to ever exist, whereas they only view Cassette as a way for them to keep extorting money out of Fantine. Val Madeline shows up at the Thénardiers inn, and he's like, yo, Fantine sent me to take away your Cassette now. And then the Thénardiers are like, no, you cannot have Claudette. There's a really stupid running gag about Monsieur Thénardier not knowing what Cassette's name is. It's not important. Anyway, but then Val Madeline is like, yo, I got money. So then the Thénardiers are instantly like, okay then, buddy, have fun with your new Cassette. The movie then jumps ahead by like 10 years and starts focusing on a bunch of characters who are almost completely unrelated to the established cast of characters we have so far. Fun. However, this is when the movie gets significantly more interesting, because that's when they introduce a bunch of hot 20-something men who are all screaming that they want a revolutionary war. And no, this part of the movie is not reminiscent of Hamilton at all. What could possibly make you think that? The 2 best characters in this new squad are Grantaire and that guy. Okay, so for the longest time, I pronounced that guy's name as Enjolras, but now I'm starting to hear people pronounce it as Enjolras, and, like, that does sound more French, so I think that's the actual correct pronunciation. But A, that pronunciation sounds kind of stupid, not gonna lie, and B, I'm already pretty sure that I'm pronouncing most of these names wrong, so adding one more to the list shouldn't have that much of an impact. Enjolras is this guy who is very passionate about the French Revolution, to the point where he's basically running himself into the ground every single day to try and get this thing going, and he literally doesn't even realize it, because that's just how dedicated to this thing that he is. the book literally states at one point that he's in love with France and, like, no one else, as in, like, romantically in love with the country of France. So that has led many people to speculate that he might be asexual or some other variant. My personal headcanon is that he's asexual demi-romantic, but that's a completely different issue. Grantaire is Enjolras' best friend, and he is basically like the comic relief drunk character. So everyone else will be going through this, like, complex battle plan for the next day, and then Grantaire will show up and be like, hey, what day is it? And then everybody will be like, oh, Grantaire, you silly chronic alcoholic. But Grantaire is really, really depressed because he believes that if the revolution ever gets off the ground, it's just going to fail. So every day he has to sit there watching his best friend and Crush working on something that he knows is just going to result in his death. And it's really freaking sad. So, like, Grantaire and Enjolras are totally soulmates. And in case you think that all of the gay stuff is just me being a crazy fangirl, well, get ready, people, because we have got some symbolism up in here. Enjolras and Grantaire are believed to have been based off of the Greek gods Apollo and Dionysus, respectively. Enjolras is always described as having beautiful blonde hair and rosy cheeks, which is often how Apollo is portrayed, and Grantaire and Dionysus are both chronic drunks. In addition, there's a line in the book where it says that Grantaire's entire being revolves around Enjolras, or something like that. So Apollo is the god of the sun, and although Dionysus is primarily a wine god nowadays, back in his day many people also viewed him as an underworld deity, so it could be argued that he represents the earth. So, from there, that would mean that Enjolras represents the sun, and Grantaire represents the earth. So, when the book says that Grantaire's entire being revolves around Enjolras, it's saying that the earth revolves around the sun. Getting back to the gay, the Greek gods are somewhat notorious for not exactly being the straightest deities on the block, and Apollo and Dionysus are no exception. For example, in one myth, Dionysus falls in love with a male satyr named Ampelos. Ampelos? Anyway, soon after Dionysus falls in love with him, he realizes through his divine power of prophecy that Ampelos is soon going to die. Doesn't that remind you of how Grantaire feels that the revolution is going to fail and result in Enjolras' death? Gay! Apollo had a lot of male lovers over the years, but one of the most prominent is Hyacinthus, a young Spartan prince. One day, Apollo and Hyacinthus are playing a cute couple game of let's throw this giant discus back and forth. But one time when Apollo throws it, the discus goes the wrong way and it bonks Hyacinthus on the head and he dies. In most tellings of the story, Apollo's throw was rigged by a jealous wind god who was also in love with Hyacinthus and was upset at Apollo and Hyacinthus' cute relationship. However, there are some tellings of the story where Apollo just straight up threw the thing wrong and Hyacinthus' death was literally just his fault. In fact, that really fits better with Apollo's mythos in general because he is very often the cause of his lovers' deaths. So, to recap, Apollo was indirectly the cause of his boyfriend's death. I don't mean to spoil the ending or anything, but I wonder if anyone would be able to make any comparisons between that story and the story of Enjolras and Grantaire by the end of this video. Gay! As for characters other than the not ambiguously gay duo, we have Gavroche, a little 10-year-old boy who is just very spunky and adorable, and literally everyone likes him. Like, you literally have to like him and find him adorable in some capacity. If you are a human being, you literally have to like Gavroche, no exceptions. There's two guys in the movie that I literally can't tell apart because they both have curly dark hair and they both have similar names. One of them is Combeferre, the other is Courfeyrac. And one of them is like an older brother to Gavroche and he's really close to him. And then the other guy is really close with the first guy, and I could not tell you for the life of me which one was which. Before I round off the movie cast, I want to mention a character who didn't make it into the movie, but that Sadie really likes. I think his name is Jolie. Is that correct? I can't 100% confirm if that is correct. But anyway, he is this poet guy, and he has this beautiful long red hair, and he gets publicly assassinated for daring to speak out against the government through his poetry. and that's all I know about him. But, there you go, Sadie. I really hope that I actually remembered what his name was, because I'm gonna feel terrible if Jolie isn't his name. The last member of the movie cast is Marius, aka Eddie Redmayne, aka Hot. Marius is good friends with this girl named Eponine, who you might remember as the Thénardier's spoiled daughter that they treated great while Cosette got treated like crap. However, now that Eponine has grown up, she has stopped being a spoiled brat and is very pro-revolution. Eponine's like, hey guys, can I join your protest bandwagon? And they're like, sure you can, but we're not gonna let you actually participate in the protests or anything because you're a girl and women are like inherently weak and stuff. To make things worse, Eponine has fallen hopelessly in love with Marius, which I really can't blame her for, but Marius is an oblivious idiot who can't take a hint. So one day, Val Madeline and Cosette come to Paris, and keep in mind that because of the time jump, Cosette is now like 18 years old. So, Cosette and Marius make eye contact on the streets for like 2 seconds, and they instantly decide that they have fallen so in love with each other. They are more in love than any man and woman have ever been in love, and they decide that they need to get married, like, right now. Okay then. While they're touring the streets of Paris for some reason, Val Madeline and Cosette run into 2 beggars on the street, and they soon realize that they are the Thénardiers, who have gone broke because they're idiots, and they have decided to blame all of their financial failures on Val Madeline's rescue of Cosette, and they swear that they will, like, have their revenge on him or something. Later that night, Marius and Cosette meet outside her house with, like, a fence dividing them, and they sing of their truly amazing and well-developed and not shallow at all love for each other. And Eponine happens to stumble across them, and you can literally see on her face the exact moment when she just truly dies inside. Eponine sings dramatically in the rain about how she's on her own or something, and then we cut back to Val Madeline, who I guess just didn't hear all of the melodramatic singing earlier. Also, like, can I just ask, what is the conflict here? Like, why can't Marius and Cosette get married? Like, I know Val Madeline still has some money left over from his time as mayor, and Marius is kind of poor, so does he, like, think that Val Madeline's going to reject his proposal because he's a commoner? Or, like, I know later on Val Madeline runs away because he's afraid that his criminal past will, like, besmirch their wedding for some reason. So, like, is that why he won't give them their blessing? Like, what? Why? Like, where be conflict? What is happening? Anyway, due to all of the support for the revolution that's been going recently, the French government sends a bunch of police officers into Paris to, like, make sure that no one tries anything. And one of the people they send is none other than Mosquito Herbert, who is still trying to hunt down his man crush. I mean, his mortal enemy. Then there's this song called One Day More, where everybody sings about their plans for the future. Like, Marius and Cosette sing about their stupid impulse marriage, and Joris sings about his wishes to overthrow the government, as you do. The Thénardiers' plan to kill Val Madeline, or whatever the heck they're gonna do to him, involves going down into the sewer for some reason. So in this song, they're literally poking their heads up out of a manhole cover, and it's really stupid. Eponine has come to the conclusion that since Marius and the others didn't notice her because she was a girl, she's going to cut all her hair off and pretend to be a guy, Mulan style. Is this supposed to be subtly implying that Marius is bisexual? Because even if that's not what's happening here, that's still how I'm going to choose to interpret this. Herbert sings about how he's going to quash the revolution and then put Val Madeline in handcuffs. And I think Val Madeline is also in this song, but I don't even know what his motivation in this story is anymore. I think he's just trying to not get killed by the Thénardiers and or locked in a dungeon by Herbert. Like, I don't know. The next day is Barricade Day, which basically just means that the revolutionaries went and raided a local IKEA of all its furniture and then just stacked it all up in the middle of the street as like a sort of wall to protest from. There's a hilarious part where the police are like, who's there? And then Marius is like, the French Revolution. And then the police are like, fire! So everybody starts shooting at the revolutionaries, and miraculously only one of them dies. Eponine. She's like in Marius's arms as she's dying, and she's like, Marius, I'm actually Eponine, and I've always loved you. And then Marius is like, oh, I'm sorry, and then she dies, and it's so awkward. After that, the revolutionaries decide that it might be a good idea to take a break from barricading for a bit. And now I have to tell you about something incredibly frustrating. So, in the movie's original score, there was this song called Drink With Me, where Grantaire voices his concerns that Enjolras might die today, and he just wants Enjolras to talk to him as a friend and just slow down and not think about the revolution for a few minutes. But since Enjolras refuses to do that, Grantaire is just going to keep fighting anyway, because he knows how much this means to Enjolras, and if he is going to die, then so will Grantaire. And it's so romantic, and I can't handle it. However, this song, which is about 40 seconds long, was cut from this 2.5-hour movie. And you know why? It was because, for whatever reason, they had the choice of either including this beautiful song or including that bit in the Master of the House song where the Thénardier set up Santo of a hooker. And they chose to set up Santo of a hooker instead of properly developing one of the movie's main characters so that you actually care when he dies. I can't anymore. Bye, guys. Anyway, the revolutionaries go back to the barricade, and the police start shooting again, and this time, everything goes wrong. So, Gavroche, the freaking 10-year-old, is just wandering around in the middle of the street in front of the heavily armed police officers, singing a protest song. He's a smart one. Remember the two characters that I can't tell apart, Combeferre and Courfeyrac? Well, one of them is trying to whisper to Gavroche to tell him to get out of the way, but they're trying to do it quietly so that they don't alert the other one who's really attached to Gavroche, and it's really sad. And then Gavroche gets shot mid-song lyric. What you say? That you only meant well, when cause you did. What you say? That it's all for After that, everything goes to Shiza, and everyone starts dying. Like, Marius gets shot in the arm, and I'm pretty sure that Combeferre and Courfeyrac die somehow as well, but I don't remember. The only death that I do actually remember is Enjolras and Grantaire, because, in case you couldn't tell, I am trash for the game. So the two are at the top of this tower, and they're standing in front of, like, an open space in the wall, and they're cornered by a bunch of police officers, so they're about to get shot. And then Grantaire holds out his hand, and he says, "Do you permit it?" And Enjolras hesitates for a moment, and then he grabs Grantaire's hand, and then the two get shot, and they fall out the tower together. Guys! Grantaire was like, "Yo, Enjolras, if I'm gonna die for your stupid revolution, can you at least admit that you love me first? Do you permit the homo?" And then Enjolras was like, "Okay, yes, I do love you. I do permit the homo." Guys, they literally died holding hands. Oh my god, I am so done with freaking musical theater and its freaking adorable gay ships that all end in heartbreak. First Be More Chill, then Hamilton, then Wicked, and now this. What? Like, why? Why would you do this to my soul? And, like, there's an even sadder interpretation of the "do you permit it" thing, too, because some people think that it's Grantaire asking Enjolras, "Do you permit me to die here because I don't want to live anymore?" And then Enjolras is like, "Okay." And that's just so heartbreaking that I can't even think about it. Valmadolin comes across the injured Marius, and he decides to try and get him to safety, so he slings him over his back and starts running down the road, but eventually he can't run down the road any longer, so he decides to take a detour through the sewer. The Thénardiers do run into him down there, but they don't try to kill him for some reason. Back on the streets, Valmadolin has almost gotten Marius to safety when he runs into his good friend, Mosquito Herbert. Herbert's about to shoot him, and then Valmadolin is like, "Yo, Herbert, this guy on my back is, like, kind of freaking dying, and I'm kind of trying to get him to a freaking hospital, so could you please get the frig out of my way? Thank you!" Herbert is suddenly confronted with the truth that Valmadolin is actually a good and honest man, and that he didn't deserve to be hounded by Herbert for all these years, and that Herbert has spent his entire life hunting a man, all because of a loaf of bread. and internalized homophobia. Overcome with self-hatred for his own actions, he decides that there can only be one, Valjean or Javert. So he takes himself to the top of a high building and jumps off of it. His body lands in a fountain, and if you watch the actual movie, the sound effect they play when his body hits the water is so uncomfortable. The movie fades to the next day, and we see Marius sitting alone in a kitchen with his arm in a sling, and he sings this really depressing song called Empty Chairs and Empty Tables about how all of his friends are dead. After that, Marius finally gets up the courage to just freaking marry Cassette already, but Valmadolin is afraid that his criminal reputation will cast a negative light on their wedding. As I said earlier, it makes no sense. Anyway, so he goes into hiding, which greatly upsets Marius and Cassette because they want him there on their big day. On the day of the wedding, the Thénardiers show up, and they aren't instantly thrown out of the wedding due to their constant abuse of Cassette and the fact that I still don't even know if Monsieur Thénardier has learned her first name yet. But anyway, for some reason, they know where Valmadolin is hiding, and they tell Marius and Cassette that he is in the church that he stayed with the bishop at for like 2 seconds at the beginning of the movie, so Marius and Cassette run off to go find him. When they find Valmadolin, he's sick and dying, because literally none of the characters that I like are actually allowed to survive this freaking movie. So Valmadolin tells Marius and Cassette that his real name is Valjean and that he's a criminal, and then Marius and Cassette say that they don't care about that and that they think he's a great father, and then Valjean sees the bishop guy who was in the movie for 2 seconds at the beginning, and then the movie fades, and you see Enjolras and Grantaire and Gavroche and Eponine, and everyone's all together at the barricade singing about "Do you hear the people singing the song of angry men? It is the music of a people who will not be slaves again," and it's really happy, and then Valjean joins the party, and then you realize that all of the characters here died earlier in the movie, and you're like, oh, it's fine. I didn't need my heart anyway. Side note, Mosquito Herbert doesn't actually get included in that great barricade in the sky, and that bothers me. Part of me thinks that it's just because Herbert is our antagonist, and Valjean would probably only want to be reunited with his friends in heaven, but, like, Herbert regretted his actions, so, like, why couldn't they have met in heaven and then forgiven each other for their actions and reconciled and, like, maybe started making out or something? And now, this. You are now revolting with Enjolras and Marius. I was trying to get it to blow at the camera, but, like, that didn't happen. My old fandom thinks I'm gay. I guess it's always been that way. Maybe it's 'cause of the way that I walk makes them think I like Enjolras. I like Enjolras. With something revolution, we will nip it in the bud. Something, 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 something. They will wet themselves with blood. I don't know the words to the song. I just figured out how to play it in like 2 seconds. So I decided to throw it in the video for fun. 'Cause I don't know. Herbert's gay. Something, something. One day more. You'll be back. Soon you'll see. You'll remember that you liked prison. You'll be back, time will tell. You'll remember that jail served you well. Oceans rise, empires fall. We have seen each other through it all. And when push comes to shove, I will strip you of all your freedom to remind you of my love. Da 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 da. Dear little Cassette, what to say to you? You still have chores to do. Get up, you lazy slacker. When you came into our house, you cried, and you still haven't gotten over that, even though we told you to suck it up. What is wrong with you, you stupid freaking lark? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Sadie. Happy birthday to you. and Sadie, don't ever tell the police that you are the French Revolution. And Abby, I'll see you on Friday.